Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into calculated risk-taking for entrepreneurs. And to guide us, we'll be using Nate Silver's On the Edge, going through some of your highlighted notes.
Yeah, on the edge. Really insightful exploration of risk across different fields, from poker to venture capital to AI development, and all of them offering some pretty valuable lessons for the business world. We're going to focus on applying those to your entrepreneurial journey today.
I'm especially curious about, how those seemingly unrelated fields, poker and casinos, can offer insights to budding entrepreneurs.
Right.
That's a fascinating connection.
It is. And Silver really nails it when he introduces the concept of the river. It's a metaphor, you see, for this community of strategic thinkers. Gamblers, venture capitalists, AI developers, they all kind of operate with this shared mindset.
I see.
They're always analyzing odds, calculating that expected value, and they make decisions with a deep understanding of uncertainty.
So you're saying this is a concept, this river concept, is something that every entrepreneur should be familiar with.
Oh, absolutely. And the book dives deep into poker, a game, as you know, that heavily relies on understanding probability and risk. And what's fascinating is how it all connects back to the business world. Much like a poker player calculates their moves based on, well, probabilities, entrepreneurs really need to assess those potential outcomes of their decisions, constantly weighing the risks against the potential rewards.
Right. It's not just about, intuition. It's about a much more calculated approach. And speaking of calculations, the book delves into this rise of these computer solvers in poker.
Oh,
They
yeah.
use these super complex algorithms to determine like the optimal strategies for any given situation.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
It is.
And, while we might not have these solvers for business decisions just yet,
Right.
the key takeaway here really is that analytical rigor. These poker players, AI developers are constantly analyzing data, testing assumptions, and adapting their strategies based on what they learn. That data-driven approach, that commitment to continuous improvement is invaluable for any entrepreneur.
Makes sense. The book also gets into the casino business. And that's where you see this fascinating aspect of risk management in action. Casinos, they're masters of probability, and they use it to their advantage.
Right.
They design these games and environments that, in a way, subtly encourage customers to gamble more.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you're thinking.
Right?
Sounds a bit manipulative, but think about it from an entrepreneurial perspective.
I see what you're saying.
It's all about creating an experience for your customers that subtly guides them towards the outcome you want.
Yeah.
Kind of like a well-designed casino.
It's all about understanding customer psychology, really. You use that knowledge to craft a more engaging, ultimately more successful business.
So speaking of psychology, the book cautions against, falling into the trap of chasing losses,
Oh, yeah.
a behavior we often see in gamblers. As entrepreneurs, it's so crucial to recognize when a specific strategy just isn't working
Mm-hmm.
and to have the discipline to cut your losses.
Right. You got to know when to fold them. Persistence is important, sure, but so is adaptability. Even the best poker players, the most seasoned venture capitalists, they all experience setbacks.
Okay.
It's part of the game. The real skill is in managing your risk effectively, avoiding those catastrophic losses, and learning from every single mistake you make.
And that leads us to one of the most compelling insights from the book, in my opinion, the importance of long-term thinking.
Yeah.
And understanding variance. Poker tournaments, for example,
Mm.
they have a lot of luck involved.
Mm.
A skilled player might have a losing streak, but over the long haul,
Over time.
their strategy will win out.
Exactly. Entrepreneurship is much like a poker tournament in that way. You got to have your ups and downs.
Yeah.
Don't get discouraged by those short-term setbacks. Focus on developing a solid strategy, adapt as needed, and keep your eye on the prize.
That long game,
Right.
always the long game. The book also looks at venture capital, an industry notorious for its high-risk, high-reward investments. It compares VCs to poker players, pointing out their shared knack for assessing opportunities, managing risk, and making bold decisions. However, it also kind of critiques that world
Right.
for concentrating wealth and power in the hands of, well, a select few.
It raises these really important questions about accessibility. Especially for new entrepreneurs, it's tough to break into that system, especially if you don't have the same resources, the same connections.
Right. And then we have this concept that seems, I don't know, a bit unrelated at first, effective altruism.
Interesting concept.
This movement that emphasizes using evidence and reason to create positive change. But, it might resonate with our listeners more than they realize. The core principles of effective altruism, things like clear thinking, rigorous analysis, and a focus on long-term impact, those are so valuable for any leader.
Absolutely. It encourages us to think beyond just profit, to consider the broader impact of our business decisions. How can we create a business that's not only successful, but also ethical,
Hmm.
sustainable?
Now, the book really dives deep into this world of gambling. It spends a lot of time discussing the dynamics of risk in all these different scenarios.
Mm.
It compares cash games and poker to tournaments.
Right.
And this distinction is actually super important because it highlights a key difference in, well, risk profiles.
Mm-hmm.
In cash games, you can walk away whenever you want, take your winnings.
Mm-hmm.
Tournaments, though,
Mm.
you're in it for the long haul.
Mm.
Much greater risk, sure, but with the potential for those huge, huge rewards.
And recognizing which game you're playing as an entrepreneur, that's critical for managing risk.
Exactly. Don't go
Mhm.
all in on a tournament unless you're truly ready for what might happen.
You got to have a plan. You got to have that long-term vision.
Now, the book features this incredibly successful poker player, Vanessa Selbst.
Known for her very unconventional style.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of her. She was famous for her aggressive plays, her willingness to bluff, really caught a lot of opponents off guard.
She was a master of deception, and it reminds us that sometimes in business, you got to think outside the box. Don't be afraid to shake things up, to make bold moves.
Hold on. Let me just interject here.
Mm.
While Selbst's story is definitely inspiring, it's important to remember she was a highly skilled player. Blindly copying her style without a deep understanding of your own game, that can backfire big time.
Right. You need to know what you're doing.
As an entrepreneur, you have to develop your own unique approach, one that's both strategic and authentic to you.
Authenticity is key. It's not about being a copycat. It's about understanding the principles, analyzing the situation, and creating a strategy that fits you, fits your business.
Now, the book also talks about this danger of, I think they call it tilting, this idea of letting emotions cloud your judgment, leading to irrational choices. It's a pitfall a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the early days.
Oh, yeah.
They fall into this.
It's easy to get caught up in the emotions, especially when things aren't going your way.
Exactly. It's like that saying, when you're in a hole, stop digging.
Right.
Emotional discipline, it's so crucial for making sound business decisions. When things get tough, take a step back, breathe, analyze the situation objectively. Don't let those emotions take over.
Don't let them control you.
So speaking of poker tactics, the book delves into this concept of bluffing. Now, obviously, we're not endorsing straight-up deception in business.
Of course not.
But there's a more, I don't know, nuanced way to apply this concept.
I see what you're getting at. We're talking about strategic communication.
Exactly. It's about presenting your case in a persuasive way, highlighting your strengths, really framing your arguments effectively. Think of it as like mastering the art of negotiation, persuasion. That's essential for any entrepreneur.
It's a core skill, for sure. The book also dives into this whole psychology of risk. You know, why are some people naturally risk averse while others gravitate towards those high stakes situations? It even gets into like the role of genetics, environment, all shaping our tolerance for risk.
That's an interesting thought. Something for our listeners to think about when they're building their teams. Do they need someone who's really comfortable with taking risks?
Yeah.
Or do they need someone who's more, I don't know, cautious, detail-oriented?
Right. And the answer probably depends on the specific needs of the business, right?
Yeah.
What are those roles they're trying to fill? Having a diverse team, though, with different risk appetites, that can often be incredibly advantageous.
Right. Because then you get that wider range of perspectives, approaches to the problem.
Exactly.
And speaking of risk management, the book offers some really cool insights from, casino design.
Mm-hmm.
Casinos are masters at subtly manipulating the environment to encourage gambling. Think about it. They use these labyrinth-like layouts, slot machines with those flashing lights and sounds placed very strategically. Even the lack of clocks. It's all designed to keep those patrons engaged, to keep them gambling.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how they use those environmental cues to influence behavior. And while as entrepreneurs, we don't need to create casinos,
Right.
the takeaway here is understanding how subtle design choices can influence the customer experience and their behavior.
It's about creating an environment that nudges them towards that outcome you want, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's making a purchase, signing up for a service, or just spending more time engaging with your brand.
Engagement is key. And it's not
Yeah.
just about the design, right?
Right.
Think about those complimentary drinks the perks casinos offer. They're creating a sense of obligation, encouraging customers to reciprocate by gambling more.
Interesting.
And we can translate that, to our world. Customer loyalty programs, reward systems, these can all be powerful tools to encourage repeat business.
Now, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about sports betting. The book really gets into how technology has completely transformed this industry. Algorithms, data analysis, all of it.
It's a data-driven world,
Mm.
and it's led to a much more sophisticated understanding of odds, risk, allowing those sports books to manage their operations much, much more effectively.
The book highlights this idea of sharp action in sports betting. These are the professional gamblers, the ones who are skilled at spotting mispriced odds and consistently making a profit.
They're not just lucky, are they?
No, not at all. They approach sports betting like a business. They use data, they use analysis to guide their decisions.
It's a great example of how a data-driven approach combined with discipline and expertise can lead to success, even in a field as high risk as sports betting.
Right. But let's be very clear here.
Of course.
We're not suggesting anyone go out and become a professional gambler.
Definitely not.
The takeaway is that regardless of the field, a data-driven analytical approach is essential for finding those opportunities, making those smart decisions.
Absolutely. Now, some sports books, they actually try to limit bets from these sharp players, to protect their profits. They're using algorithms to identify and restrict them.
Yes.
It really highlights this constant need for adaptation.
Right.
You've got to be aware of the competitive forces and adjust your strategy accordingly. It's an evolving landscape.
It's a fascinating glimpse into this world of professional gambling, but it also raises some, ethical considerations.
Of course.
Right? Potential for addiction, exploitation, it's important to acknowledge those.
Absolutely. Ethical consideration should always be at the forefront of any business. Responsible practices, transparency, customer protection, those are essential for a sustainable business model, a truly ethical one.
Now, the book introduces us to this legendary sports bettor, Billy Walters. The guy was known for his uncanny ability to, beat the odds.
Heard of him. What was his secret?
Well, he had this knack for finding inefficiencies in betting markets, exploiting them. He had this vast network of informants and a keen eye for spotting those mispriced lines.
He must have been meticulous.
Oh, absolutely. Studied statistics, watched game film, consulted experts. It wasn't about luck. It was about hard work, a commitment to excellence.
That resonates with any successful entrepreneur. Really.
Totally. It highlights how success often comes down to preparation, research, that willingness to really go the extra mile.
Even in a field like sports betting, that strategic, disciplined approach, it makes all the difference.
Now, the book also emphasizes the importance of emotional discipline. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement, make impulsive bets, especially when you're on a winning streak. Billy Walters, though, he demonstrated that managing those emotions, that's key.
That makes sense. You need to stay level-headed.
Successful bettors, they control their emotions, they make rational decisions even when the stakes are high. They focus on the long game. They don't let those short-term wins or losses cloud their judgment.
And that resonates so deeply with entrepreneurs. We face those ups and downs all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
You need to stay focused on those goals.
Right.
Don't let the short-term stuff derail you.
Exactly.
And this applies to, everything. Managing your finances, leading your team through tough times.
Staying the course.
Exactly. So the book talks about this concept called arbitrage opportunities. It's essentially finding these discrepancies in the odds offered by different sports books and, exploiting those to basically guarantee a profit.
So you're saying it's like finding a sure bet.
Well, in theory, yes. But it's not that simple. These opportunities, they're fleeting, they require quick action, and you need a good chunk of capital to actually capitalize on them effectively.
So it's not a strategy for the faint of heart.
Exactly. Not something for those brand new entrepreneurs. It's really for the seasoned pros.
It does highlight the importance of expertise, though, right? Decisiveness. You got to understand the market, spot those discrepancies, and then act quickly, decisively. Those are valuable skills.
For sure. And technology plays a huge role in this. The rise of all these online sports books, that data availability,
It's all connected.
has made it easier to find those discrepancies.
It's an evolving landscape, and technology is driving that evolution. Entrepreneurs need to be ahead of the curve. They need to embrace these new technologies, understand how to leverage them to their advantage.
Now, let's move on to venture capital. This one's particularly relevant for our listeners. The book discusses its nature as this high-risk, high-reward investment strategy. Venture capitalists are essentially, placing bets on those early-stage companies, the ones with the potential for that explosive growth.
Right, they're looking for the next big thing. It's a highly speculative field, but the returns can be massive.
The book compares venture capitalists to poker players in terms of their risk tolerance, their ability to assess opportunities. They both need that keen eye for talent, the willingness to go all in, so to speak.
And the ability to manage that risk.
Right? Absolutely. But the book also critiques the industry for concentrating wealth and power in the hands of, well, very few.
Right, and that's an important point for any entrepreneur trying to navigate this landscape.
Exactly. It highlights those challenges of breaking in, of getting that funding, especially for those from, underrepresented backgrounds.
It really underscores the need for greater diversity in the VC world
Yeah.
to level the playing field and make sure everyone has that shot at success.
Now, the book also acknowledges that luck plays a role in venture capital success. Even the most skilled investors, they can make bad bets. Countless factors can influence whether a startup sinks or swims.
It's a reality check. You can do everything right, have that brilliant idea, a solid team, a perfectly executed plan, and still face setbacks.
It's inevitable. There's always that element of chance.
Always.
Now, the book recommends something called portfolio diversification for VCs. Basically, you spread your bets across multiple companies. This way, you're minimizing your risk.
That makes sense. You're hedging your bets.
Exactly. It's a valuable lesson for entrepreneurs, too,
Yeah.
right? Thinking about how they allocate their resources, how they manage their own risk.
Absolutely. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
The book also delves into the psychology of venture capitalists, their motivations, how they make decisions.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Some are purely driven by, those financial returns.
Right.
Others are motivated by a desire to make a positive impact on the world.
To leave their mark.
And that's valuable insight for entrepreneurs who are seeking funding. They need to understand those motivations, the values of the people they're pitching to.
It's about finding the right fit, not just in terms of, business strategy, but also in terms of their shared vision. What do they want to achieve? What kind of
Right.
impact do they want to have on the world?
And speaking of pitching, the book highlights the importance of storytelling. Entrepreneurs, they need to craft these compelling narratives. They need to resonate with investors.
It's not just about the numbers. It's about painting that picture of the future, getting those investors excited.
Right. But even with a great story, a solid plan, venture capitalists, they face this constant pressure. They need to deliver those returns. And it's not always easy to predict which companies will be the winners.
It's a high-pressure world filled with uncertainty. Even experienced investors make mistakes. And that brings us back to the book's central theme.
That theme of embracing uncertainty.
Exactly. Learning to manage that risk. There are no guarantees. Entrepreneurs need to get comfortable with taking those risks, but those risks should be calculated.
Informed, right.
Informed by a deep understanding of the market, the competitive landscape, their own strengths and weaknesses.
The book also touches on the ethical considerations of venture capital, particularly those conflicts of interest, that concentration of wealth.
It's a complex issue.
It's a reminder that success shouldn't come at the expense of, ethical principles.
Absolutely. Doing the right thing matters.
Now, let's dive into a concept that might seem a bit, out of place in a discussion about business. Effective altruism. It's a movement that encourages people to really think about how their actions can benefit not just themselves, but society as a whole.
That's a powerful idea.
It is. The book argues that these principles of effective altruism, clear thinking, that rigorous analysis focusing on the long-term impact are valuable for anyone in a leadership position, including entrepreneurs.
It's about asking yourself, how can my business make a difference?
Exactly.
It's not just about corporate social responsibility. It's about aligning your business goals with your values.
Creating a company that is both profitable and makes a difference. Now, the book goes on to say that a lot of people drawn to this effective altruism movement often choose careers in technology, finance.
At higher paying fields.
Right. They want to earn those high salaries so they can donate a big portion of their income to charity.
So they're combining that capitalist mindset with a commitment to social good.
Right. Using their skills, their resources to maximize that impact.
That's something for our listeners to consider, right? As they build their businesses, think about the legacy they want to leave.
For sure. The book does acknowledge the challenges, though, right? How do you actually measure that impact?
Right.
And what about those unintended consequences?
There are always challenges.
But ultimately, it's about using what you have to make a positive difference.
It's about using your power for good.
Now, let's move on to another transformative topic, artificial intelligence.
AI. It's changing everything.
It really is. The book dives into both the incredible opportunities and the potential risks. And it's a field that's rapidly changing, new breakthroughs all the time.
It's mind-boggling how fast it's moving.
We're seeing AI make strides in healthcare, finance, transportation, but there are also concerns. Job displacement, potential social disruptions. It's something we need to be talking about.
Absolutely. As entrepreneurs start integrating AI, they need to consider the impact on their workforce.
Right. Create opportunities for those employees to adapt, to thrive in this new world.
It's about bringing everyone along.
And of course, there are the ethical considerations. The book talks about bias in algorithms, accountability, the potential for misuse.
It's a powerful technology, and with great power comes great responsibility.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs who are developing or using AI, they need to ensure that their AI systems are ethical, unbiased, used for good.
It's not just about the technology itself, it's about the intention behind it.
Now, the book also talks about artificial general intelligence, or AGI. This is the idea of AI with, human-level cognitive abilities. It's still theoretical, but it's a hot topic. Some believe it's inevitable, potentially dangerous. Others are much more optimistic about the benefits.
It's a topic that sparks a lot of debate.
It's a reminder that these advancements come with both potential and peril. As entrepreneurs navigate the AI world, they need to be aware of those broader societal implications. Be part of that conversation about responsible AI development.
It's about shaping the future we want to see.
And the book really emphasizes that human oversight is crucial in all of this.
Right. We can't just let the machines take over.
Making sure AI serves humanity, not the other way around.
It's about using AI as a tool.
To enhance human capabilities, not replace them.
Collaboration, not replacement.
And then there's this fascinating concept called the technological singularity. This idea of a point in the future where AI surpasses human intelligence and can basically self-improve, leading to this, exponential acceleration of technological progress.
It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
It does, but the book encourages us to think about it.
To be prepared.
To consider those potential consequences, both positive and negative.
It's about being proactive, anticipating those challenges, and shaping the future responsibly.
Now, shifting gears a bit, the book gets into political decision-making and how leaders approach risk in their roles.
It's a high-stakes game.
They're constantly facing tough choices, weighing those risks and benefits with potentially huge consequences for millions, even billions of people. And the book highlights how different leaders have different approaches to risk. Some are much more risk-averse. They prefer to maintain that status quo. Others are more willing to gamble on new ideas.
And that difference in their approach, that can have a huge impact on their policies, their legacies.
For sure. And the book explores this role of public opinion in all of it, how it shapes those political risks. Leaders often feel this pressure to make the popular decision.
Even if it's not the right one.
Even if it's not in the best interest of, the country or even the world.
It's a tough position to be in.
It is. It's that constant balancing act, finding that sweet spot between doing what's popular and doing what's right.
It's about having the courage to make those tough choices, even when you're facing opposition.
Absolutely. And that's something our listeners, as future business leaders, will have to grapple with as well.
They'll need to find their own balance.
The book also highlights the importance of, expertise.
Having access to the right information.
Leaders need access to reliable information, analysis from experts. They need to inform their choices, especially in a world that's becoming more and more complex every day.
But it's not enough to just blindly follow the experts.
No, not at all.
You need to be able to critically evaluate that advice. Make your own judgments based on the evidence.
That's a crucial skill, for sure.
It applies to entrepreneurs as well.
Right. You seek out expert advice, But you can't outsource your decision-making entirely.
It's about finding that balance.
Using expert input to inform those decisions, but ultimately taking ownership of your choices. The book also, acknowledges that emotions play a role.
Even in politics.
Even in political decision-making,
Yeah.
even the most powerful people, they're still subject to those human emotions.
We're all human.
And it really underscores the importance of emotional intelligence for leaders. Being able to understand, manage those emotions, your own emotions and the emotions of others.
That's a critical skill, especially in high-pressure situations.
As an entrepreneur, you'll be making decisions that are going to evoke some strong emotions, from the highs of success to the lows of those setbacks. Learning to manage those emotions, make those rational decisions, that's going to be crucial.
Emotional regulation is key. Now let's talk about something a bit, well, sobering. Existential risks.
The big ones.
The threats that could potentially wipe out humanity or cause, irreversible damage to civilization. The book explores the risks associated with advanced AI, with biotechnology.
This might seem a bit far removed from, the day-to-day concerns of a new entrepreneur.
It's important to think about the big picture.
It is. The book mentions concerns about an AI arms race, where countries are competing to develop more and more powerful AI systems,
It's a scary thought.
potentially leading to, unforeseen consequences.
It's like a modern-day nuclear arms race. It highlights the need for international cooperation, ethical guidelines, responsible innovation. We need to be careful with this technology.
Absolutely. The book also cautions against the misuse of biotechnology, the creation of deadly pathogens, genetic enhancements that could worsen social inequalities.
It's about using technology for good.
It really emphasizes those ethical considerations, the need for responsible innovation and foresight. We need to think about the long-term consequences of our actions.
We need to be good stewards of this planet.
Now, let's shift our focus to diversity of thought. Perspective in decision-making. This is so crucial, especially for entrepreneurs.
Especially when you're dealing with complex situations, uncertain situations.
Exactly. When you've got a group of people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspectives.
You're more likely to identify those blind spots,
Right.
challenge assumptions, come up with truly innovative solutions.
It's about creating a culture where people feel comfortable sharing their ideas, even if those ideas are unconventional, even if they go against the grain.
That's how you get those breakthroughs.
And the book cautions against, I think they call it groupthink,
Oh,
where everyone just conforms to a single way of thinking.
it can stifle creativity, lead to some really bad decisions.
Like everyone's trapped in an echo chamber, right?
Yeah. Reinforcing each other's biases.
Failing to consider those other viewpoints. That can be detrimental for any organization, especially a startup that needs to be nimble,
You need to be able to pivot,
responsive.
adapt to change.
And the book suggests some strategies for combating groupthink, like encouraging constructive criticism, getting those outside opinions.
Fresh perspectives are so valuable.
Appointing a devil's advocate.
Someone to challenge the status quo.
Exactly. It's about creating that culture of open-mindedness, intellectual humility, recognizing that nobody has all the answers, that we can learn from each other.
It's a continuous learning process.
Now let's talk about luck, that elusive yet pervasive force. The book really explores how our perception of luck is influenced by, our mindset, our actions, our cultural background.
Not just about random chance, is it?
Not at all. It's about recognizing opportunities and being ready to seize them.
Being in the right place at the right time.
And the book suggests that while we can't control everything in life, we can increase our chances by being prepared, by working hard, putting ourselves in a position where, good fortune is more likely to find us.
It's about creating your own luck, in a sense.
Exactly. Being proactive, taking ownership of your destiny. However, our perception of luck can also be distorted.
Right, by those cognitive biases.
We often overestimate our abilities. We underestimate the role of chance. We attribute our successes to skill, our failures to bad luck, even when
chance might have played a significant role in both.
it's about being honest with ourselves about those strengths and weaknesses, recognizing that, sometimes even the best laid plans go awry because of things beyond our control.
It's a humbling thought.
It is. And it's a crucial lesson for those entrepreneurs, They often face those unexpected challenges.
Setbacks are a part of the journey.
The book also introduces this concept of moral luck,
Oh, interesting.
which challenges those traditional ideas of responsibility and blame. It suggests that our judgments of others, those moral judgments, they're often influenced by factors beyond their control.
Like the consequences of their actions, the circumstances they find themselves in.
Right. It's a reminder that the world isn't always, black and white. Our judgments, they should take into account the complexities of the human experience, including chance.
The role of fate, so to speak.
Now, let's shift our focus to this relationship between risk-taking and innovation, a topic that's, close to the heart of any entrepreneur.
The lifeblood of any startup.
Innovation often comes from that willingness to take risks, to try new things, to challenge how things have always been done.
To push the boundaries.
Without risk takers, societies would just stagnate, right?
They'd never progress.
But different societies, different cultures, they have very different attitudes towards risk-taking.
That's an interesting point.
The book explores how those factors, like economic freedom, social mobility, that tolerance for failure, they can either nurture or stifle innovation.
Some cultures value stability over everything else.
Right. Prioritize tradition and conformity.
While others encourage entrepreneurship.
Experimentation. And those cultural differences, they have a huge impact on a society's economic and technological development.
It shapes the landscape.
It's about finding that right balance between caution and boldness, right? Maintaining stability while embracing change.
It's a delicate dance.
And that's something entrepreneurs need to consider, especially as they navigate different markets.
Different cultures, different expectations.
The book highlights the importance of, learning from failure.
Failure is a great teacher.
Emphasizing that those setbacks can actually be some of the most valuable experiences. They lead to future success.
It's about resilience.
It's about picking yourself up.
Dusting yourself off.
And trying again.
Some of the most successful companies, individuals, they have this long history of, failures.
It's through those failures that they learn the most valuable lessons, develop the resilience, the determination they needed to really achieve great things.
They turn those setbacks into stepping stones.
It's a reminder that success is rarely a straight line, right?
It's a journey.
It's a winding path with those twists and turns.
Unexpected detours.
Embracing that journey, learning from every experience, that's essential for growth.
It's the only way to truly grow.
Now, let's dive into the role of intuition.
Intuition. That gut feeling.
Often seen as the opposite of reason, right?
But the book suggests it can be a powerful tool.
Especially when we have limited information or time.
You gotta make a quick decision.
It's that inner voice, that feeling in your gut that tells you what to do.
It's not always easy to explain.
The book explores how intuition often stems from past experiences.
Those unconscious patterns.
That unconscious processing of information. And it can lead to, insights that we wouldn't have reached through just conscious thought alone.
It's like our subconscious is working in the background.
Piecing together information.
Generating ideas.
But it's important to remember intuition is not infallible.
It can lead us astray.
The book acknowledges that, right? Relying too much on intuition, it can have some downsides. Our gut feelings, they can be based on biases.
Incomplete information.
We need to be able to tell the difference between intuition that's rooted in sound judgment.
And intuition that's driven by, maybe emotions, biases.
The book suggests some strategies for developing our intuition, refining it, like paying attention to those gut feelings.
Reflecting on past experiences.
Exposing ourselves to new situations, diverse situations.
Expanding our horizon.
It's about learning to trust those instincts, but also being aware of their limitations.
And using our critical thinking to evaluate them.
To make sure they're guiding us in the right direction.
It's about finding that balance.
Now, the book introduces this idea of a black swan event. These unpredictable events that have a massive impact, often catching people by surprise.
The events that nobody saw coming?
Think about events like, the 9/11 attacks, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. These were all black swan events. They had these far-reaching consequences.
They changed the world.
And they continue to shape our world today. It's a reminder that the world is, it's complex, it's unpredictable. And we need to be ready for those unexpected events.
We need to be prepared for anything.
The book suggests strategies for navigating these events, like diversifying those investments, developing contingency plans, building these resilient systems that can withstand, shocks.
It's about being proactive, taking steps to mitigate those risks.
Even if we can't predict exactly what the future holds.
Embrace that adaptability.
Resilience.
Wow.
Knowing that change is going to happen.
The only constant is change.
And the best way to be prepared is to be able to adapt to it.
To roll with the punches.
Now, the book examines risk aversion, how it varies across different cultures.
And even between individuals.
Right. Risk aversion is that tendency to choose certainty over uncertainty.
Even if it means missing out on some potential rewards.
And this tendency, it can be influenced by, well, a lot of things. Genetics, upbringing, that cultural background.
Nature and nurture, both playing a role.
And the book highlights how some cultures are just, well, more risk-averse. They prioritize tradition and stability.
While others are more, I don't know, gung-ho about entrepreneurship.
Right. They embrace change. And those differences, they have a huge impact on a society's economic and technological development.
It shapes the trajectory.
It's about finding that balance between, well, caution and boldness.
That sweet spot between risk and reward.
Being able to take those calculated risks, but also manage those downsides. And our own personal risk tolerance, it can vary too, right?
Depending on the situation.
We might be more risk-averse with, I don't know, our personal finances, but then much more willing to take risks in our careers.
It's about knowing yourself.
And this variability in our risk tolerance, it highlights how important self-awareness is. Entrepreneurs, they need to understand their comfort zones.
Set those clear goals.
Develop plans for different scenarios. And the book dives into, well, the psychology of loss, how it affects our decision-making.
Loss aversion, right.
That tendency to feel the pain of a loss much more strongly than the pleasure of, an equivalent gain.
It's like that old saying, it hurts more to lose $100 than it feels good to find $100.
And this quirk, this psychological quirk, it can lead us to make some really irrational decisions.
Especially when we're trying to avoid those losses.
The book gives some examples of how this manifests, in investing, negotiating, even our personal relationships.
We've all been there.
Think about investors who hold on to those losing stocks for way too long.
Hoping for a miracle.
They're hoping it'll rebound, even when it's pretty clear it's not going to.
They're emotionally attached.
Right.
Yeah.
And the book offers some strategies for overcoming this loss aversion. Things like setting clear stop-loss limits.
Diversifying your investments.
Focusing on the long term instead of those short-term fluctuations.
Keep your eye on the prize.
Those are valuable lessons for any entrepreneur. You need to manage your resources wisely.
Avoid those emotional decisions.
Take a step back. Be rational.
Think objectively.
Now, the book introduces this field of behavioral economics.
Oh, fascinating field.
It challenges those traditional economic theories by, taking into account those psychological factors.
Human element.
Right, that influence how people make decisions. Traditional economics, it often assumes that people are, rational.
That they make decisions based purely on logic, on self-interest.
But behavioral economics recognizes that human behavior is much more complex than that.
It's messy.
It's nuanced. Our decisions, they're often influenced by those emotions, those biases, even those social norms.
We're not always as rational as we think we are.
And the book highlights how behavioral economists, they've conducted these experiments.
To show how easily people can be swayed.
By things like, framing, anchoring, herd behavior.
It's all about presentation.
Framing is how that information is presented. Anchoring is our tendency to rely too much on that first piece of information we receive.
That first impression.
And then herd behavior, that's our inclination to, follow the crowd.
Even when it might not be the best idea.
It's a reminder that our decisions, they're not always as rational as we like to believe.
We're susceptible to influence.
And the book suggests strategies for, becoming more aware of those influences.
Becoming more conscious of our decision-making processes.
Making those rational choices. Being critical thinkers. Questioning those assumptions.
Considering different viewpoints.
Making decisions based on evidence and reason.
That's the key.
Now let's talk about trust. A fundamental element of any successful business, really any successful relationship.
The foundation of it all.
It's essential for any interaction, whether it's investments, contracts, or personal relationships.
Trust is the glue that holds everything together.
Without trust, those transactions become difficult.
Partnerships fall apart.
And the book explores how trust is built.
How it's broken.
And the consequences of both.
It's a fragile thing.
Deception, betrayal, lack of transparency, those can all erode trust. And once it's broken, it's really hard to rebuild.
It could take a long time.
And it can have a lasting impact on our willingness to cooperate with others.
It can make us more cautious.
So building and maintaining trust, that's crucial for any entrepreneur. It's about being honest, reliable, transparent in your dealings with others.
It's about building a reputation for integrity.
Showing that you can be counted on.
That you're someone people can trust.
Now, the book explores this concept of the wisdom of crowds.
Interesting concept.
how collective intelligence can actually be more powerful than individual expertise.
The power of the group.
It suggests that a large group of people, each with their own unique knowledge perspectives, they can collectively come up with, more accurate predictions, more accurate judgments than any single person, even an expert.
It's like that saying, two heads are better than one.
Exactly. The book highlights examples of how this wisdom of crowds has been used successfully in, all sorts of fields. Predicting election outcomes,
Solving those complex problems.
forecasting financial markets.
It's a powerful tool.
One example is, Wikipedia.
The online encyclopedia.
It relies on contributions from millions of people.
It's a constantly evolving repository of knowledge.
It's a testament to that power of collective intelligence.
The power of collaboration.
It's a reminder that we can all learn from each other.
That even ordinary people can make significant contributions.
But the book also points out that there are certain conditions that are necessary for this wisdom of crowds to actually work.
It's not a foolproof system.
You need a diverse group, different perspectives.
People who can think independently.
It's about harnessing that collective intelligence, but also mitigating those risks of groupthink.
Or bias.
Now let's dive into game theory.
Game theory. Sounds a bit intimidating.
It's this mathematical framework for analyzing strategic interactions.
Where the outcome depends on the choices of others.
It's like trying to figure out the best move in a game of chess.
But in real-life situations.
And the book explores how game theory can be applied to all sorts of situations. Business negotiations,
Political campaigns.
international relations. Game theory helps us understand, why people cooperate,
Why they compete.
how they make decisions when their interests clash,
It's about understanding human behavior.
understanding the incentives that drive people's actions.
And designing systems that align those incentives with the outcomes we want.
Now, the book introduces this classic game theory scenario. It's called the prisoner's dilemma.
I've heard of this one.
It involves these two individuals who are arrested,
They're given a choice.
cooperate or betray each other.
And the outcome for each person depends on what they choose, but also on what the other person chooses.
Right, and the rational choice for each person, individually, is to betray the other person.
Even though that leads to a worse outcome for both of them if they had just cooperated,
It's a classic example of the challenges of cooperation.
even when it's in everyone's best interest.
And the book suggests some strategies for overcoming this dilemma, like building trust, establishing norms of cooperation, creating institutions that punish defection,
Reward cooperation.
finding ways to align individual incentives with those collective goals. A crucial lesson for entrepreneurs, for sure.
Absolutely.
You need to build trust,
Encourage collaboration.
both within your organization and with your partners.
It's all about teamwork.
Now let's explore the role of storytelling.
Stories are powerful.
They shape our understanding of risk and uncertainty.
We use stories to make sense of the world.
Stories, they make those abstract risks feel more concrete, more real,
They evoke emotions.
and that can have a huge impact on our behavior. But the book cautions us to be critical of these stories.
Don't just blindly accept them.
We need to consider the source, the evidence, and the potential biases of the storyteller. Just like with any information,
We need to be discerning.
evaluate those stories carefully.
Look beyond the surface.
Question those assumptions.
Dig deeper. Uncover those facts.
The book introduces this concept of framing,
Framing. How information is presented.
how it can influence our perceptions of risk and uncertainty.
It's amazing how the same information presented in different ways can lead to completely different interpretations,
Right.
different decisions.
The book gives a great example. A medical treatment with a 90% survival rate,
Sounds much more appealing.
than one described as having a 10% mortality rate.
Even though it's the same thing.
It is. And we often react more strongly to those potential losses than to, equivalent gains. Framing a choice in terms of what we stand to lose, it just feels riskier.
It triggers that fear response.
It's about understanding these subtle psychological nuances.
Recognizing how framing can be used to, manipulate our perceptions.
Especially when we're evaluating risk.
It's a powerful tool.
The book also gets into heuristics.
Those mental shortcuts.
Those mental shortcuts our brains use to make those quick decisions.
We often do it unconsciously.
It's like those rules of thumb we develop,
Based on our experience.
allowing us to make those judgments quickly.
In those complex situations.
But while heuristics can be helpful for that quick thinking, they can also lead to biases, to errors.
Especially when we need to be more careful.
They're based on our past experiences, which don't always apply to new situations.
It's like trying to use a map of one city to navigate a completely different city.
Exactly. The book encourages us to recognize our heuristics, to be aware of their limitations. Slowing down, gathering more information, considering different perspectives. That can all help.
It's about being more mindful.
Now, cognitive dissonance.
That uncomfortable feeling.
That feeling of holding two conflicting beliefs, ideas, values.
It creates that mental discomfort.
And to try to get rid of that discomfort, we often rationalize our behavior.
Yeah.
We deny the evidence.
We even change our beliefs.
Just to align them with our actions.
We want to feel consistent.
The book uses the example of smokers.
They know smoking is bad for them.
But they keep doing it.
To reduce that dissonance,
They downplay the risks.
exaggerate the benefits.
Or they even convince themselves they'll quit soon, even though they have no real intention of doing so.
It's a classic example of self-deception.
And it illustrates how we sometimes twist those facts
To fit our narratives.
to reduce that inner conflict. The book reminds us to be honest with ourselves,
About our beliefs, our actions.
to seek out information that challenges our views,
Be open to changing our minds.
embrace that intellectual humility, acknowledge that, well, we don't have all the answers.
There's always more to learn.
Now let's talk about emotions, how they affect our decision-making.
Emotions are powerful.
They can enhance or hinder our ability to make those sound judgments.
We've all made those rash decisions in the heat of the moment.
Right, regretting it later. The book talks about how emotions like fear, anxiety, especially under pressure, they can lead to those impulsive actions.
They hijack our rational thinking.
And the book emphasizes the importance of, well, emotional regulation.
Especially when you're making those critical decisions.
Take a step back, calm down.
Approach the situation with a clear head.
But it's also important to remember those positive emotions,
Like excitement.
enthusiasm.
They can also lead us astray.
When we're caught up in the thrill of a new opportunity, it's easy to overlook those downsides, those risks.
You got to balance that enthusiasm with a dose of realism.
Consider those worst-case scenarios.
Get those dissenting opinions.
Develop backup plans.
Be prepared for the unexpected.
And then there's the sunk cost fallacy.
The sunk cost fallacy. A trap for many entrepreneurs.
This tendency to keep investing in something, even when it's clearly not working.
Just because you've already invested so much.
Time, money, effort.
It's hard to let go.
It often stems from, that aversion to loss.
That desire to be proven right.
But the book suggests focusing on those future outcomes.
Not dwelling on the past.
Sometimes cutting your losses and moving on, that's the best thing to do.
Even though it can be a tough pill to swallow.
It's about recognizing when it's time to pivot, to change course,
To abandon a project.
no matter how much you've invested.
Sometimes you got to cut your losses and move on.
Now, the book dives into the power of narratives
Stories.
in shaping our understanding of risk and uncertainty.
We use stories to make sense of the world.
They simplify those complex events,
Create those heroes and villains.
provide a sense of order.
But those narratives, they can be subjective.
They can distort reality,
We need to be aware of that potential for bias.
especially when those narratives shape our understanding of risk.
It's about being critical consumers of information.
Questioning those narratives, considering those different viewpoints, evaluating the evidence,
Don't just take things at face value.
and then we have confirmation bias,
That tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs.
while ignoring or downplaying information that contradicts them.
It's like surrounding yourself with people who always agree with you.
It might feel comfortable.
But it prevents you from seeing the bigger picture.
From hearing those different perspectives, the book uses the example of people with strong political beliefs who only consume news from sources that, well, align with their views,
They're reinforcing their own biases.
shielding themselves from those alternative viewpoints.
That's living in an echo chamber.
And overcoming confirmation bias, it takes effort.
Conscious effort.
We need to actively seek out that information that challenges our beliefs. Expose ourselves to those different viewpoints. Be willing to change our minds.
Be open to new ideas.
Now, let's revisit intuition.
We talked about the pitfalls.
But the book also recognizes its value, especially in those situations where we don't have a lot of information or we need to make a decision fast.
That gut feeling can be valuable
It's often rooted in our subconscious ability to process information
to identify those patterns.
that we might not consciously recognize.
It's like our brain is making connections behind the scenes.
But it's not magic.
It's not ESP.
It's our brains making those connections based on our experience,
our knowledge.
even if we're not aware of those connections.
It's a fascinating process.
And while we should acknowledge our intuition, develop it, it's crucial to, well, test it.
Especially when making those big decisions.
Getting feedback from others, gathering more data, considering those different perspectives, that can all help.
Make sure your intuition isn't leading you down the wrong path.
Now, let's explore the impact of technology.
Technology has revolutionized our lives.
Both the incredible opportunities
And the unprecedented challenges.
The book highlights how technology has empowered us, given us access to vast amounts of information, instant communication.
The ability to monitor those risks in real time.
All these advancements, they can help us make better decisions.
Respond to those threats more effectively.
But technology also introduces new risks.
Cyber attacks.
Data breaches.
The spread of misinformation.
All of these can undermine trust, create instability, even threaten national security.
It's a double-edged sword.
The book encourages us to, well, be balanced in our approach to technology.
Recognizing both the benefits and those potential drawbacks.
Invest in cybersecurity.
Promote digital literacy.
Encourage responsible innovation.
Harness that power, but be mindful of the downsides.
Now let's talk about the role of government.
In managing risk and uncertainty,
Especially given all the recent global events.
governments play a vital role,
In protecting citizens, providing those services, regulating markets.
especially during times of crisis.
And the book acknowledges the challenges governments face in responding to these new risks. They're often criticized for being too slow or for overreacting.
It's a tough balancing act.
Governments are large, they're complex. Making quick, decisive decisions is not always easy.
Especially when you're dealing with bureaucracy.
Navigating all those different perspectives. And the book suggests some strategies for improving how governments manage risk, investing in research and development,
Promoting transparency.
encouraging collaboration between those agencies and the private sector.
Working together to find solutions.
Now let's shift to a more personal level.
How we navigate risk in our own lives.
Risk, it's an inescapable part of the human experience. We're making decisions every day that involve some level of risk.
Some big, some small.
And that's where the book's insights become really relevant for our listeners.
For those who are just starting out on their entrepreneurial journey.
The book offers some really practical advice.
For managing risk in both our personal and professional lives.
And it starts with understanding your own risk tolerance.
Are you comfortable with those high-stakes decisions? Or do you prefer a more cautious approach?
Once you understand your risk appetite, you can set those goals, develop those plans, and get advice from trusted sources.
Do your research, talk to experts.
And the book really emphasizes the importance of being proactive, not just reacting to situations.
But actively shaping your future.
Take ownership of your choices.
Manage those potential risks.
Embrace uncertainty. It's a part of life.
It's unavoidable.
And building resilience is crucial.
Things aren't always going to go according to plan.
Setbacks, challenges, they're part of the journey.
Resilience is what allows you to bounce back.
To learn from those experiences.
How to come back stronger.
And the book emphasizes that setbacks, they're not failures.
We're opportunities for growth.
It's about developing that mental and emotional fortitude to navigate those challenges and come out stronger, wiser.
It's about learning and growing from every experience. It's about turning those tough times into valuable lessons.
That's a powerful message for sure, especially for entrepreneurs. They face so much uncertainty. They need to be able to adapt and quickly.
Absolutely. And that's where, On the Edge really hits home. It emphasizes that, look, we can't eliminate risk entirely. It's part of life, but we can learn to manage it effectively.
It's about shifting our perspective, right? Instead of viewing risk as this scary thing, this threat, we start seeing it as, a potential opportunity for growth, for innovation.
Exactly. Embrace the uncertainty. Use it to your advantage.
The book encourages us to develop that river mindset we talked about earlier. Embrace the uncertainty. Use those strategic thinking skills, those analytical tools, and take those calculated risks to, reach those goals.
It's about being proactive, adaptable, always willing to learn and grow.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into On the Edge, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. The book covers all these different areas, right? Poker, casinos, venture capital, AI. But the core principles, they're universal. Whether you're, playing a high-stakes poker game or launching a new business, the ability to assess that risk, make those smart decisions, and adapt, that's what sets apart those who succeed.
It's the foundation of success.
What really stood out to you from our conversation today? Those poker analogies, the insights into casino design, maybe even that broader discussion of effective altruism and the impact of technology. I encourage you to reflect on these ideas. Think about how you can apply them to your own journey. And remember, the key isn't to avoid risk altogether. It's about understanding it, managing it, and ultimately using it as a tool to achieve your goals. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing those boundaries.